Harrow's not gonna be happy about the bridge.
Ugh, Harrow can suck my dick. He's the Secretary of War, not the Secretary of Bridges.
When I started playing Evil West, I felt like I was about to experience a super fun third-person action game, and to a certain extent I did before I realized I basically experienced what the game had to offer halfway through. Starting with the story, you play as Jesse Rednier, a cowboy vampire hunter who sets out to basically save the world with an oversized electric gauntlet from the forces of evil, namely a little girl named Felicity DeBano, who wants to turn everyone into vampires. You do this by working under your father's vampire hunting institute alongside a nice diverse set of characters who are all very stereotypical for what you expect for a cast in a game like this. Throw in some twists and turns and you could see from a mile away, and you have a passable story that isn't great but not terrible either. Which is fine. I can give the story a pass because the game isn't trying to sell you on that when you first start playing it. Where Evil West tries to sell the game to the player is through the combat, and the combat does a damn good job at doing it. From slick melee combos to fast-paced gun action, the fluidness in Evil West combat is some of the best I've experienced. It really brought me back to playing something like Devil May Cry, with how I was able to endlessly flow everything together from one enemy to the next. And the ability to do this only grows as you make your way further into the game, thanks to a simple level system where every time you level up, you get a perk point and money you can use to buy new abilities for your character and his weapons, because the perk points are for your character skills, and the money is for upgrading the weapons. Then throughout the world, as you make your way through the game, you can find hidden chests that also give perks and money that help improve your character even more, which was great to me since it really gave me something to look forward to outside the combat as I went from one level to the next. Not to mention the chests can also give new skins for your character's clothing and weapons. Unfortunately, that is where the good parts of Evil West end. As good as the combat and leveling system is, everything around those slowly falls apart the further you get into the game. The enemy variety outside of the boss fights is terrible. Through the final third of the game, you just endlessly fight hordes of the same enemies over and over again, and it gets so old because it becomes a game where instead of being excited about what the next encounter might be like, I kept asking myself what combo of the same enemies is the game going to throw at me this time. And that is always a huge problem to me, because you get situations where you can tell some enemies are just not meant to be together, but the devs don't really have a choice because the pool of enemies is so small, they have to try and do anything to make an encounter unique, which absolutely sucks since to a certain extent, some enemy pairings damage the player's ability to express themselves in combat thanks to forcing them to play a certain way. But on the bright side of that, it helps make the boss fights feel so much more unique in Evil West, because they at least give you a true punch of freshness when you're slogged down by the redundance of everything else in the game. Now, the level design unfortunately isn't able to be saved like this. Once you have experienced all the puzzles once, they become more of a boring distraction than a fun break from the action. And I really do want to touch on how, even though I love the fact that this is a non-open world linear experience, the levels feel so empty to me. You pretty much just travel through endless pathways devoid of enemies, then you find the circle with enemies, battle them, then go down the next pathway with no enemies, maybe do a puzzle section, rinse and repeat. And the game never really changes this formula through the entire experience. Even when you're at your home base of operations, the world feels empty because you can't interact with anyone outside of cutscenes. So the only way you can really get some backstory on the characters in the world of Evil West is through notes you can find hidden throughout the world. And it feels like it shouldn't have to be this way. Evil West suffers from unnecessary bloatness. Instead of being an 8 to 10 hour repeat grind mill, it should have been a nice condensed 5 to 6 hour campaign with a better level and puzzle design, more unique enemies, and side stories where you could explore Jesse's relationships with his friends between missions. Also, I felt the multiplayer was completely pointless with how they did it. You could play through Evil West in co-op, which is fine I guess, but I can't help but feel a horde mode or a co-op boss run would have been way cooler of an experience thanks to the incredible combat in the game. And honestly, they probably should have just skipped on the multiplayer so they could have used more resources and making the game better on all fronts, because I did run into some issues. They start off I did play this on performance mode on the Series X. Actually ran incredibly smooth with 0 frame drops. Quality mode, on the other hand, was nearly unplayable to me. Just felt super sluggish, and I definitely experienced some frame drops. Then on the bug front, I had a few issues where I would glitch into the ground, or an enemy would glitch into the ground, which would keep me from progressing. So I had to reload the game if I wanted to keep going. Outside of those, nothing really caught my eye. Well, except the jarring cut in cutscenes. What do I mean by this? Well, just watch this.
All right, let's stick to the facts. Bloom researched vampiric legends. A lot of...
What the hell is that? It's like they said screw having any kind of nice transition from gameplay to cutscenes. Now, obviously this doesn't change how the game plays or if the story is good or bad, but from a quality standpoint, it just feels cheap to me. Now, with all of that out of the way, I will say I want to see a sequel for Evil West. I really think there is potential for something really cool if they could bring the quality of the entire game up to the level of the combat, because I really want to recommend this, but it's just too hard when the combat is all that it really has going for it. But if we ever get Evil West 2, and the story and level design catches up to the combat, then I think you could be looking at a future Game of the Year contender. Thanks for watching, everyone. Talk to y'all whenever the next one is. Peace.